The last one, I believe, was where the city was being held under siege, and the people were starving to death. And you remember the story about the two women who had children, and they sacrificed one and killed it and ate it, and cooked it and ate it, and then the other woman hid her son, and this distressed the king greatly. And so he wanted to blame Elisha for this, because Elisha had apparently predicted it at some point. And Elisha says, well, guess what? Tomorrow this time, food's going to be dirt cheap, and everything's going to be dirt cheap. And of course, the king doesn't really buy into that, and one of his top aides really doubts it verbally. And sure enough, the very next morning, food was dirt cheap. And you may recall that the man who had doubted it publicly ended up being trampled at the gate as the people ran out to get the food and the booty from the army that had surrounded the city for so long. As you may also remember, the way that happened was the city being surrounded couldn't do anything, but God caused the army to hear a great army around them, and they ran in panic and just threw everything down and left everything as it was in the camp and threw off all their armor and their swords. And it's crazy that people will run and throw jewelry and money as they run. I don't know why you would do that, but apparently they did. So anyway, the city basically plunders the army of the Arameans, and everything is back to good again. Then we get to chapter 8, and it's kind of a side story, I guess. Remember, some chapters back, there was a woman, a Shunammite woman, who had a child who had died, and Elisha, raised the child from the dead, and this person comes back in chapter 8. Apparently, he had a relationship with her family. If I'm not, is that the one that kept the room for him? I can't remember if she's the one that kept the room for him or if it was another woman that kept the room for Elijah. But anyway, he had an ongoing relationship with this Shunammite woman's family. And it says he said to that woman at some point, go away with your family and stay for a while wherever you can, because Jehovah has decreed a famine in the land that will last for 7 years. Presumably this is in punishment for continuing sinful issues on the part of the king and the people, would be my guess. And so she leaves and lives in the land of the Philistines, which is not that far away, for 7 years. Then we're in chapter 8, verse 3. At the end of 7 years, she comes back and goes to appeal to the king for her house and land, because she had basically abandoned it. And she apparently was a very large landowner, because she had land rented out to other people and a household of fairly great value. In fact, when we first meet her, the translations differ a little bit in how they describe her. One describes her as a great lady, and others describe her as a woman of well-to-do means, or a rich woman. So it's apparent that she may be both a great lady and a rich great lady. So she comes back. The king is talking to Elisha's servant. I can never remember how that's said. Is it Gehazi or Gehazi? Okay, I can never get the vowels correct. Gehazi, like he's hazy. He's talking to Gehazi and says, "Tell me about all the great things Elisha has done." So apparently he was bored and he wanted to hear some stories about what Elisha has been doing. So as Gehazi is telling the king how Elisha had restored the dead to life on several occasions, apparently, this woman, just conveniently, serendipitously, walks through the door with her son, and she appeals to the king for her house and land. Apparently the county had taken it over because it was abandoned. And so Gehazi says, "This is the woman that I was telling you about right here." And the king asks the woman about it, and she tells him the story. And then he assigns an official to her case and said to the official, "Give back everything that belonged to her, including all the income from her land," which would imply that people were renting the land or using it for some purpose and would be paying her. Give her everything back, including the income from her land, from the day she left the country until now. An alternative view would be that the king was renting it out to people. Perhaps that was what was going on, and he said, okay, give her the income I made off of it. And that story ends there. So the story takes up again. By the way, I didn't mention that this is kind of uncommon because women didn't have a lot of legal rights. They had a little more legal rights in Israel than they did in some other places. But quite often, women did not get an inheritance, so it's unclear how she got her inheritance on that. But there's been several occasions throughout the Old Testament where women would come up and say, hey, we have a right to this, and the king or whoever would give them that, which was uncommon in the time. So Elisha goes to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, or the Arameans, was ill. When the king was told, the man of God has come all the way up here. Damascus is in that area, Syria. He says, he's come all the way up here, so he tells Hazael, take a gift with you and go meet the man of God, consult Jehovah through him and ask him, will I recover from this illness? Because he was sick. So this servant or this official goes to see Elisha. He talks with him, giving the gift of 40 camel, that's a lot, 40 camel loads of all the finest wares of Damascus. Wasn't Damascus famous for silk as well as other things? Isn't there such thing as Damascus silk? I can't remember. Anyway, some of the fine goods of Damascus. He goes in, stands before him, and says, your son, interesting, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to ask, will I recover from this illness? Quite often, certainly people in this time would use a respectful term like, you are my father. Father, why did you do so-and-so? Or Father, may I do so-and-so? It was just a term of respect. And so making reference to Ben-Hadad, your son, is sort of the equivalent of that. In this time, elders were respected and viewed as wise. Not so much now. I will not say what the candidates were. But recently, someone on the other side of a candidate's position was talking about how stupid this candidate was and everything, and they said on national television, only old white people are for him. Forget about the white part. Only old people are for this candidate. What does that say? What did she just say? Well, what was implied by that statement? Oh, come on, you know exactly what was implied by that statement. Old people are stupid. Because the candidate's stupid, only old people are for him, so they're stupid. What's the other side of that? All the young support this candidate, therefore they are intelligent and wise. That's exactly opposite, isn't it, to what reality is. How smart and wise is a 25-year-old? Like a 2-year-old labradoodle, I know I was, still am, kind of, except I'm an old labradoodle now. But we get smarter as we get older. You learn a lot. Hard knocks will teach you a lot. I have a PhD in hard knocks. Some of you have 5 PhDs in hard knocks. My hard knocks weren't nearly as hard as some of yours were. But I got scars to prove it. You learn. I thought I knew everything when I was 25. Actually, I thought I knew everything when I was in the 10th grade, but I still thought it when I was 25. The older I get, the less I know. But I know more because I realize how little I know. Remember when was it? Was it Jeroboam when he ascended to the throne? We studied this some weeks ago, and I lose track of the names. His dad had died, and he was 20-something, 30-something, and he consulted all of his father's advisors, and they said, do this. Be kind to the people. Don't be harsh like your father was. Show them compassion. And what did he do? He went over and he talked to his fraternity buddies. And they said, no, come down on them hard. You know, be tough. And being the super wise young man that he was, he followed their advice. And it cost him a lot. In fact, it split the kingdom. Rehoboam, I couldn't remember who it was. Jeroboam was his father, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, Rehoboam and Jeroboam were. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Anyway, like I said, I'm getting old and forgetful. I can't remember who these guys are. One of those old guys. Okay. Whichever it was, that's what he did. And so, let's see, where were we? So anyway, this gentleman comes and consults the Lord, and he is being very respectful toward Elisha because Elisha is an older man. Remember, Elisha was bald-headed. It caused some kids some grief because they were taunting him for being an old bald-headed guy. And so he was an older man, perhaps. You don't have to be old to be bald-headed, but it's more common that way. And so this man shows great respect for him. And he asks Elisha if he's going to, if the king is going to survive. And Elisha says, he doesn't say yes. His response is, go and say to him, you will certainly recover. He doesn't say yes, he will recover. He says, go and say to him, you will certainly recover. Nevertheless, Jehovah has revealed to me that he will in fact die. Elisha stared at Hazael with a fixed gaze until Hazael was embarrassed. In other words, he said, go and tell him. And just kept staring at him. I'm staring at one guy in the room until I'm staring at him. I know you love that, don't you do? All right. He can hold a staring contest and win every time, I'm sure. See, there is an advantage. Not me, but that's what. Okay. So he stares at him with a fixed gaze until this guy's embarrassed, and then the man of God, Elisha, begins to cry. I bet he didn't expect that. Why is my Lord weeping? Asked Hazael. Because I know the harm you will do to the Israelites, he answered. You will set fire to the fortified places, kill their young men, sword dash little children to the ground. That's gross. Oh, and even gross, and rip their pregnant women open. Hazael says, how could your servant, me, a mere dog, accomplish such a feat? Elisha says to him, the Lord Jehovah has shown me that you will become king of Aram, answered Elisha. Now, so Elisha says, this guy's going to die, and you're going to become king. That's all he said, right? That's all he said. But you should go tell him he's not going to die of this illness. He's going to recover. He's going to recover. So Hazael leaves, goes back to his master, Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad says, what did Elisha say to you? Okay, I'm going to tell you what he said. He told me that you would certainly recover. Yep, that's what he said. But the next day, Hazael takes a thick cloth, soaks it in water, spreads it over the king's face, and he dies. And then Hazael succeeds him as king. Did Elisha tell him to kill him? No, he did not. He didn't even say that he was going to kill him, did he? He just said, you're going to be king. This guy decided he wanted it right now. So he did. Elisha said he wasn't going to recover from the sickness, but he wanted it to be his way right now. So he smothers him or drowns him, whichever you want to call that, and he succeeds him as king. Okay, let's jump again. Question? Absolutely. Verse 16. In the 5th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, when Jehoshaphat was king of Judah. By the way, we're going to run into another Jehoshaphat here in a little bit that's not the same Jehoshaphat, so don't let that confuse you, and I'll point it out. When Jehoshaphat was king of Judah, Jehoram, well, here it is, in fact. Jehoram son of Jehoshaphat, well, that's him, began his reign as king of Judah. So the Jehoshaphat of Judah is succeeded by the Jehoram, son of Jehoshaphat, the king, as king of Judah. Now, we're going to get another problem here in a minute, though. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. So he reigned until he was 40. He followed the ways of the kings of Israel, not of Judah. He's king of Judah. But he followed the ways of the kings of Israel. I lost my place. As the house of Ahab had done, for he had married a daughter of Ahab. He did evil in the eyes of Jehovah. This shows that wives have great power over their husbands. She influenced him to do evil, just as Jezebel had influenced Ahab. Probably had it in his heart to do it anyway, but she made it easy on him to do these things. Nevertheless, for the sake of his servant David, Jehovah was not willing to destroy Judah, as he was willing to do Israel. He promised to maintain a lamp for David and his descendants forever. So in the time of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king. This is an area that they were in control of. So Jehoram went to, I guess that's Zayar, something like that, with all his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he rose up and broke through by night. His army, however, fled back home. To this day, Edom has been in rebellion against Judah, and another place, Libnah, revolted at the same time. So they were having a lot of state issues, shall we say, relationship issues with the people that were actually part of their small empire. As for the other events, that's about all they say about him. As for the other events of Jehoram's reign and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Jehoram rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David, and Ahaziah his son succeeded him as king. So that's all they say about that guy. So Ahaziah becomes king, verse 25, in the 12th year of Joram, the king over in Israel. They don't always overlap exactly. Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old, very young, when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 1 year. His mother's name was Athaliah, a granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. He's one of the former kings of Israel. He followed the ways of the house of Ahab and did evil in the eyes of the Lord, which basically means he worshipped Baal, or Baal, as the house of Ahab had done, for he was related by marriage to Ahab's family. Again, he's being heavily influenced by his wife and her family. Just remember, when you marry a woman or marry a guy, you're marrying their family too. Ahaziah went with Joram, son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, that's the new king that had killed the other king, king of Aram at Ramoth Gilead. The Arameans wounded Joram, so King Joram returned to... I thought I could turn that off. Pardon me. I'm going to just shut it down. Well, let me put this on silence. I thought I had done so. And it's somebody I never heard of. And it didn't work. There. Are you starting to get, what would you call it, telemarketers on your cell phone? You know, your cell phone number is not public information. But unfortunately, you start putting it down as the number to call to contact when you buy something sometimes. And now I'm starting to get calls from lots and lots of that kind of people. I think I did that right. Maybe not. Dave, how high up is this clip supposed to go? Or is it just supposed to slip up under it? Okay, so I'm forcing it. That's not right. Okay, that worked. Okay, enough of that idiocy. Where were we? Okay, his Ahaziah goes... Am I on? Okay. Ahaziah goes out to war against Hazael, the king that had smothered the other king in Aramea. and they wounded him. He runs back in verse 29 to Jezreel to recover from the wounds that the Arameans had inflicted on him at Ramoth in this battle with Hazael, king of Aram. Then Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to Jezreel to see Joram, son of Ahab, because he had been wounded. He's going to visit his, probably some relationship, I guess, but they're both kings, so they're kind of like brothers here. Then the prophet Elisha summons a man from the company of the prophets and says to him, tuck your cloak in your belt. That basically means pull up your tunic, you're going to have to run. Take this flask of olive oil with you and go to Ramoth Gilead, where the fight was still apparently going on. When you get there, look for Jehu, or Jehu, as some people would say. They don't have a J in Hebrew. Jehu, Jehu, or Jehu, son of, again, Jehoshaphat, not Jehoshaphat. This is a different Jehoshaphat. He's the son of Nimshi, it says here, and it's not the same Jehoshaphat that's ruling in Judah. Apparently it was a fairly common name. Go to him, Jehu that is, get him away from his companions, take him into an inner room, then take the flask and pour the oil on his head and declare, this is what Jehovah says, I anoint you king over Israel, then open the door and run, don't delay. Run for the hills. So the young prophet goes there, does that, separates Jehu from the others. He was the commander, apparently. It says so in verse 5. So he goes into the house. The servant says, okay, I'm anointing you king over the Lord's people Israel. You are to destroy the house of Ahab your master. This had been prophesied. And avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all Jehovah's servants shed by Jezebel. So she was quite instrumental in this. The whole house of Ahab will perish. I will cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. Wow. I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasa, son of Ahijah. These are previous kings. As for Jezebel, dogs will devour her on the plot of ground at Jezreel, and no one will bury her. Then he opened the door and headed for the hills. Ran. Sounds pretty violent. So Jehu goes out to his fellow officers. One of them asked him, is everything all right? And I love this. Why did this maniac come to see you? Why did this idiot come see you? You know the man and the sort of things he says. Jehu replies, you know how those prophets are. They don't ever know what they're talking about. They're just old men. They don't know anything. And they go, that is not true. Tell us what he said. So he tells them. Here's what he told me. This is what Jehovah says. I anoint you king over Israel. I'm not sure I would have believed that right off the bat, but apparently they did. Verse 13, they quickly took their cloaks and spread them under him on the bare steps. Then they blew the trumpet and shouted, Jehu is king. Now, he's going to be around for a few seconds here, but I need to mention something. This is the first Israelite that we have an extra-biblical record of a reference to. There's some out there that are kind of vaguely might maybe refer to somebody, but this guy is called by name on a black obelisk from the Assyrian Empire in 841 BC, apparently. Shows him kissing the ground in front of the king and calls him Jehu, son of, I think it's Nimri, which would be like his great-grandfather. And refers, and this is the first person that we have absolute external confirmation on. There are indications of others, but this one is the first one we have a totally unrelated thing. It would be great if we had a set of hieroglyphics from the time of the captivity that says we had this 1.5 million Jews in our country here, and we had them for slaves and everything. There's nothing like that. In Egypt. There's some vague references that could be them, but nothing that's clear like this. Anyway, this is the first guy in 841 BC that is extra-biblically referred to by some other document, I guess you would call it. So anyway, so Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, not the Jehoshaphat we know, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Joram and all Israel had been defending Ramoth-Gilead against Hazael. Joram, you remember, is I forget which king he is. Anyway, the two kings. But King Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from his wounds, as you recall. They had apparently shot him or something. Jehu says, if you desire to make me king, okay, if you're going to let me be king, don't let anyone slip out of the city to go and tell the news in Jezreel. I want to sneak in. Then he got into his chariot and rode to Jezreel because Joram was resting there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had gone down to see him. When the lookout standing on the tower in Jezreel saw Jehu's troops approaching, he calls out, I see some troops coming, get a horseman, send them out to see if they're coming in peace. Horseman goes out. The guy asks, and Jehu just says, what do you have to do with peace? Fall in. So the guy falls in behind him. Send another one, same thing happens, and they fall in behind. I guess they decided to follow him. The lookout reports these things, and so Joram orders, hitch up my chariot. He goes out, and Ahaziah comes with him, each in his own chariot, to meet Jehu. They meet him on the plot of ground that had belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite, which of course means very little to us, meant a lot to the people of the time. When Joram saw Jehu, he asked, have you come in peace, Jehu? How can there be peace? Jehu replies, as long as all the idolatry and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel abound. Jehu turns around and flees because he knows that's not good news, calling out to Ahaziah, treachery, Ahaziah. Then Jehu draws his bow and shoots Joram between the shoulders, apparently in the back, comes through his heart, slumps over on his chariot, obviously dying. Jehu says to Bidkar, those are great names. If I had another child, I think I'd name him Bidkar. His chariot officer, pick him up and throw him on the field that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding together in chariots behind Ahab, his father, when Jehovah spoke this prophecy against him. Yesterday I saw the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declares Jehovah, and I will surely make you pay for it on this plot of ground, declares Jehovah. Okay, so there was a prophecy concerning it. Now then, pick him up and throw him on that plot in accordance with the word of Jehovah. When Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw what had happened, he skedaddles up the road to Beth Hagen or Hagen. Jehu chases him, kill him too. They wounded him in his chariot on the way to Gur near Ibleam, but he escaped to Megiddo and died there. His servants took him by chariot to Jerusalem and buried him with his ancestors in the tomb of his ancestors in the city of David. In the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah had become king of Judah. So, Jehu's pretty much cleaning house right now, as he has only been king for a day, as it were. But he is absolutely cleaning house. Then Jehu goes to Jezreel. When Jezebel hears about it, this is kind of strange. She puts on eye makeup, arranges her hair, and looks out of a window. Okay. As Jehu enters the gate, she asks, apparently she was fairly close to the gate, have you come in peace, you, that's a funny, you come in peace, you Zimri, you murderer of my master? He looks up at the window and calls out, who's on my side? Who? And 2 or 3 of the eunuchs look down at him, and he says, throw her down. And so they do. They throw her down, and she hits the street, and some of her blood splatters on a wall, and the horses trample her underfoot. Very violent. Jehu goes in, has some dinner. Take care of that cursed woman, he says, and bury her, for she was a king's daughter. Remember, though, that it's predicted that she will not be buried. But when they went out to bury her, they found nothing except her skull, her feet, and her hands. The dogs had eaten her. They went back and told Jehu, who said, this is the word of Jehovah that he spoke through the servant Elijah the Tishbite. That's a long way back. On the plot of ground that at Jezreel, dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's body will be like dung on the ground in the plot at Jezreel, so that no one will be able to say, okay, that's where Jezebel is buried. Her body's right there. Couldn't do it. So now comes a whole litany of royal murders. There were in Samaria 70 sons of the house of Ahab. So he writes letters to the city and says, and they're the guardians of Ahab's children. He says, you have your master's sons with you, and you have chariots and horses, a fortified city and weapons. Now, as soon as this letter reaches you, choose the best and the most worthy of our master's sons and set him on his father's throne. Then fight for your master's house. Well, that'd be stupid, wouldn't it? Because that king is their king. And he says, set up one of those guys as king and get ready for a fight. That would be stupid, wouldn't it? They were terrified and said, if two kings could not resist him, how can we? So the palace administrator, the city governor, the elders, and the guardians sent this message to Jehu, we're your servants, we'll do anything you say, we will not appoint anyone as king, you do whatever you think is best. Jehu writes back, says, if you're on my side, take the heads of your master's sons and come to me in Jezreel by this time tomorrow, which they do. When they come the next day and bring the heads, Jehu says, put those in 2 piles outside the city gate until morning. Bet that is nice. Verse 9, next morning Jehu goes out. He stands before all the people and says, you are innocent. It was I who conspired against my master and killed him, but who killed all these? Now then, that not a word of Jehovah has spoken against the house of Ahab will fail. Know then that not a word of Jehovah has spoken against the house of Ahab will fail. The Jehovah has done what he announced through his servant Elijah. So Jehu killed everyone in Jezreel who remained of the house of Ahab. So remember, these were sons. So he kills everybody else that are as part of his house, as well as all of his chief men, his close friends, and his priests. Wow, leaving him no survivor. Then he goes to Samaria. He meets some relatives of Ahaziah, king of Judah, finds out who they are. And they were coming down to get Jezebel. They didn't know that she was dead. He says, take them alive. They take them and slaughter them by the well at Beth Eked, I guess is how that's pronounced. After that, he comes up on another person. He greets him. They talk. He says, give me your hand. So he does. Jehu helps him up into the chariot. Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord, he says. Then they made him ride along in the chariot. Jehu comes to Samaria. He kills all who were there. This guy is cleaning house. Of Ahab's family, he destroyed them according to the word of Jehovah spoken by Elijah. Anyway, the next story, he basically... Now, this sounds terrible. I mean, and it is. No question about it. But even as late as the 20th century, this was common practice. The last one I remember is, well, I wasn't alive, I don't guess, but it's the last one I know of that has happened, was it Tsar Nicholas II? Tsar Nicholas, the something or other, during the Bolshevik Revolution, what did they do? They came in, they killed him, they killed his wife, they killed all of his children. They killed everybody in his court. They just wiped out the royal everything. There's a reason for doing that. I mean, we wouldn't do that, I hope, but there's a reason for doing that, because if you're in any way related to the royal family, you become the heir to the throne if there's nobody else around, right? That's how that works. And they didn't want anybody to be able to make such a claim. Again, how many times have I said these were brutal and uncivilized people, and it has continued in some places of the world to this day. Very brutal, very uncivilized, very bloodthirsty people. He does something that's apparently pretty good here by some standards, starting in verse 18. He basically calls all the priests of Baal in, feigns to want to serve Baal. He actually goes so far as to make a sacrifice and says, make sure there are no non-believers in here. So they cleared the room of any non-believers, and basically he slaughters all the priests of Baal and everybody else that was a Baal believer in that room. They brought out the sacred stone from the temple in verse 26, probably a meteorite, I'm guessing. They tear it to pieces, and they tear down the temple. And it says the people have used that area for a latrine to this day. So Jehu destroys Baal worship in Israel. It says, however, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. And that is the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. God tells him in verse 30, you've done well in doing a lot of things here that I approve of, but you've kind of messed up. I'll let you go for 4 generations, but you've not been careful. Verse 31 was not careful to keep the law of Jehovah, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, that is, the worshiping of the cattle, of the golden calves. So it says in verse 32, in those days Jehovah began to reduce the size of Israel. Hazael, that king that smothered the other king, overpowered the Israelites throughout the territory east of the Jordan and in all the land of Gilead, which he describes further. As for the other events of Jehu's reign, they're written in the book of the Kings of the Annals. Jehu rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria, and Jehoahaz his son succeeded him as king. The time that Jehu reigned over Israel in Samaria was 28 years. This was just kill after kill after kill after kill. It's appalling to read things like that. At least it is for me. When I see stuff like that, it just makes me sick at my stomach to think that one person could be that cruel and violent, or anybody could be that cruel and violent. We're going to learn here next time that they are trying to kill some more of the king's children of another king, and one of them is only 1 year old, and they hide that kid. And 6 years later, when he's 7 years old, he becomes a king of Judah. And he is one of the great kings that you may have heard his name, Joash. He becomes a great king. And so we'll take up with that one here probably next week when we start the lesson then. The Lord bless you, and especially during this time of year. May the joy of the holiday season, the Christmas, the chosen date that we celebrate the birth of Christ, bring you joy and comfort and love and happiness. Through Christ our Lord, amen.